I felt like I was in a whole new planet the instant I entered my new place of employment. I'm Lucas, and I'm 32 years old. I recently moved to work as a programmer at a game development business. I was working somewhere else at first, but I ended up moving here because of some circumstances. I genuinely regretted arriving on my first day, but I didn't really have an option. One of the reasons was that I felt like I had a lot of people working against me. I was hired in the middle of my career, and I'm currently disturbed by my coworker Linda's presence. At 30, she is 2 years younger than me. She has a model's form and facial attributes, making her quite appealing if she doesn't speak. She is a programmer, just like me, which astonished me. I thought she was in a more public-facing position, such as public relations. She is basically my immediate senior. Linda seemed to have a strange dislike for her male coworkers. She may have gone through some tough times in the past, but that is unrelated to me. However, I am now the target of Linda's annoyance and rage. The scenario is completely irrational. It's reasonable to think that I shouldn't have come in these conditions. Don't stand there thinking about nothing. When you sit at your work in the morning, you don't expect someone to bring you coffee, do you? Linda yelled at me this morning as soon as I got to my desk. The fact that Linda's seat is directly next to mine is the worst. I don't think that at all, I said tactfully, and Linda gave a snort of approval. She continued to observe my every action rather than beginning her own task. Every morning, this nitpicking and searching for errors takes place. She gossips to everyone and exaggerates, even if it's not done her way or isn't an error. I feel like I've been branded as the inept team member at work because of Linda. I'm confined to running errands and doing mundane chores every day. Nathan Carter, a friend from middle school, introduced me to this company. I'm not sure how Nathan spent his time in college because we attended different institutions. He has been with this game company since founding it while still in college. We hadn't communicated for a long time until 6 months ago. He requested my assistance in raising the caliber of the programming team. I came to this company with the intention of helping Nathan. I wanted to communicate with my coworkers without any prejudices, so when I joined, I instructed Nathan not to treat me any differently. But Linda has thrown that plan into a loop. I'm trying to think of what I should do next. We were all anticipating the arrival of some sort of brilliance because everyone was saying, President Carter stole you from another company. However, we only received an errand runner. What? To ensure that people could hear her, Linda purposefully spoke loudly to me. She was talking loudly so the other coworkers could hear her, and anyone could see it. An angry response would be immature. Linda is really unrelenting in her criticism of me, but I've chosen to ignore her comments. Are you avoiding my presence? Lucas, I'm speaking to you. Even though I'm younger, I'm your senior in this organization. It wouldn't hurt to have a little respect, she added obnoxiously. This must be a senior who irritates people. I gave Linda a small grin and carried on ignoring her as though nothing had occurred. I switched on my computer and got to work on my daily task. Seeing that I was not responding, Linda continued, You better take your work seriously. You'll never catch up to us otherwise. And then she got up to leave her seat. I can work in peace at last. I let out a little sigh of relief. Nathan remarked, Hey, you look down. By the evening, I was exhausted from putting up with Linda's sarcasm all day. I appeared to be deep in contemplation, despite the fact that I was seeing Nathan for dinner for the first time in a long time. Did I look that way? My response was, just a bit tired. Maybe you're just not used to the air in America anymore, Nathan remarked, grinning meaningfully. I could tell by his expression that he was still clinging to the memory of my covered application and attendance at a foreign university. Why is that tone used? Are you still harboring resentment? I inquired. Nathan is often a straightforward and decent guy, but when this subject is brought up, he changes. Nathan apparently had other ideas. He wanted us to go to the same institution and launch a business together. It was Nathan's dream and his strategy. He ought to have informed me sooner about something so crucial. This is not the place to expect someone to read between the lines. I wanted to try something different, so I enrolled in a university overseas. I always thought I belonged elsewhere more than in the United States. That's what I faintly assumed because I'm not very sensitive to other people's subtle feelings. But I've kept it a secret for another reason. Because you went abroad for university, my startup was delayed by 2 years, Nathan stated, his wine-induced peripheral vision a little blurry. Aren't you drinking too much, buddy? As he grabbed for the wine bottle to refill his empty glass, I warned him, You've never been good with alcohol. This is the only way I drink here. The food and wine are so delicious that I always end up drinking too much, which may be the owner's taste, Nathan remarked. I had to concur with Nathan's statement. Nathan took me here for the first time after I got back to America, and it's a really cozy spot. The inventive French food offered here is quite tasty. The second bottle of the wine that was chosen to go with the meal is nearly empty. Nathan praising me makes me smile. From behind me came the voice of a young woman. Nice to meet you. My name is Chris. Madison. As she offered her name, the woman said, smiling and glancing at my face. I was surprised because I recognized the name from the contract. Madison, the proprietor, is a female. Without a doubt, I thought it was a man. I was so shocked, sir, that I unintentionally let my actual thoughts out and hastily put both palms over my lips. Maybe he thought I was funny, because Chris laughed hard. Then she pulled out a chair and took a seat next to me. It's because Chris is my name. She rested her elbows on the table and gazed up at me with a playful twinkle in her eye, saying, I frequently get that reaction. She gave me what appeared to be a humorous glance. She seemed a little annoyed, even though she claimed to hear it frequently. But Chris is such a beautiful name for a woman, isn't it? Those words just fell out without praise. I was taken aback by myself. Chris's eyes whitened even further, as if she was as shocked. She smiled and said, I'm happy, even if it's just flattery, and she looked really lovely to me. She was quite likable because of how effortlessly and genuinely her expressions altered. Chris was the one who, on a whim, gave me the money for my startup. According to Nathan, she is also the owner of my business and this location. It was clear from Nathan's tone that Chris was a successful businessman. Although she appeared younger than us, she must have a talent for business. She may have been in middle school or maybe high school when Nathan was in college. It was unclear how she came up with enough money to launch a firm in that short time. The mystery just became more complex. Don't worry, it's not shady money, Chris humorously remarked, seemingly able to read my mind. The only thing I've figured out from our first meeting, I replied. Chris said, You figured out something already, with a delighted tone. It gave me the impression that she liked to talk. I've realized you're a woman full of mysteries, I responded. Chris gave me an enigmatic smile in response. After I responded with a profound laugh, Chris reached for the wine glass that was left on the table with her pale hand. Chris's pale palm was beautifully illuminated by the dim light that filtered through the crimson wine. It was quite lovely and sat comfortably. Faintly conscious of my anticipation of her next words, I watched Chris carefully take a sip of wine. Women are made of mysteries. Men are silly. It is scarcely worth describing a woman who is completely understandable, she said. I could relate to her response. I felt compelled to treasure this pleasant chat even more after being badgered and chastised all day. Hey, am I intruding here? Nathan interrupted, seeming a little irritated as though he had been excluded from Chris and my conversation. Are we being a bother? Nathan said, Hey, in frustration as we both answered. As we were leaving, Chris had quietly given me her private phone number, which Nathan, who was intoxicated, was unaware of. The following day expected the same gloomy morning despite the amazing meeting. Luckily, I've never had a hangover and have always had a high tolerance for alcohol. Arriving at work a few minutes after me, Nathan was slumped over his desk in anguish and looked awful. I told him, You drank too much, and set a bottle of mineral water and some hangover medication on his desk. My bad, Nathan said as he took the medication gently, his voice scratchy from the drink. I remarked, I'd hate to call it a favor, but I'm looking for some information, to Nathan, who was gasping for air after consuming 500 milliliters of water. Nathan's response: "I can give you any information about Chris. I've been sworn to secrecy," made me click my tongue in exasperation. Chris appears to have outpaced me. Now, determining how to handle this circumstance turns into a difficult conundrum. Right now, Nathan is my sole trustworthy information source. President Carter hung over again. Between Nathan and myself, Linda stepped in. In an effort to facilitate employee consultation, Nathan's desk is on the same floor as ours, despite his designation as president. In comparison to other organizations, this lowers the perceived hierarchical barrier. Maybe that's why Linda frequently speaks casually to President Nathan. "Should I get you another bottle of hangover medication? Do you also need water and energy drinks?" Nathan must be suffering from a hangover on a regular basis. With a frustrated expression on her face, Linda spoke to Nathan while holding her adorable pink wallet in both hands. "I usually feel horrible about this, but I'll be all right starting today." Nathan pointed to me and added, "My wife is here to take care of me." It was always Nathan who got into trouble when we used to hang together, and I was responsible for cleaning up after him. It brought up memories of being referred to as his wife. As it turned out, I had unintentionally made mineral water, vegetable soup, and hangover medication. Linda gave me a disgruntled frown after noticing these things arranged on the desk. Her icy demeanor toward me may have been influenced by Nathan's presence, I realized from that expression. "So, I'm not needed then. I suppose I'll just cover for you with errands, since I'm not useful for the work," Linda remarked, crossing her arms over her chest. It was obvious from her posture that she was ignoring me entirely. Linda responded condescendingly, "Well, the underling should learn by watching my work and pick up the skills," and Nathan gave me a look as though he had something to say. I simply gave his eyes a small shake of my head. "I'm always learning from you," I smiled in response, sensing that her irony was not being understood. After making a gentle tongue click, Linda left Nathan's desk. "Is that okay with you?" Nathan questioned as I saw her retrenchment. "It's all right for now. I have plans of my own," I informed him. Although it's not yet appropriate to disclose my genuine goals, Nathan must have felt something when he saw his close friend denigrated in front of him. Nathan called me back to understand the state of the business and the technical capacity to eliminate any negative aspects. I had planned to watch for a while, but things didn't work out that way. It all started with a phone call. It was me who responded to it. I almost got my eardrum damaged when I was shouted at before I could even say the name of the company. That's how furious the caller was. We had just delivered a program to Director Smith, a longtime client, and he sent it. Director Smith's call was unexpected because I'm usually extremely calm. When he indicated that the program we delivered had a serious issue and that a section we had discussed updating during the specification meeting hadn't been changed at all in the final product, I was able to calm him down and pay attention. I used the computer to see who was in charge of the project while I listened. Linda's team was in charge of the task. I could tell Linda must have heard the shouting over the receiver since she was staring at me with a pale face as I looked at her in disbelief. A correction with delivery by Lucasaro was urgently needed by the client. Regretfully, Nathan and the sales team were out conducting fieldwork. It was too stressful to even put the client on hold as Linda checked in. "I get it," I said. "We'll begin the corrections right away," and hung up. I set down the receiver, and Linda came running over to me. "Don't accept it by yourself. We can't possibly make the deadline by Lucasaro. Our reputation will suffer if we don't succeed." Linda was still berating me, and her face was white. I got the idea that she was blaming someone else in order to keep her emotional equilibrium. However, this is work. Making excuses or assigning blame is not acceptable. You were in charge of the project, right? How are you going to fix this? I looked directly into Linda's eyes as I asked. She took a step back, as if my intensity intimidated her a little. However, Linda never backs down. She immediately collected herself and roared back at me. "As the project manager, I've calculated that fixing it will take a few days. By guaranteeing delivery by Lucasaro, Are you harboring resentment toward me? I was out of breath from her forcefulness. It appeared that the client had no time to wait for a few days. Errors in the specification updates are unacceptable, but bugs are another matter. It demonstrates how poorly the project team coordinated. Unable to reply, Linda chewed her bot Lucas lip as I counted. It must be something she knows herself. This needs to be addressed immediately. Please let me know if there is anything I can do to help. What are you able to do? With a sarcastic smirk and a pale face, Linda rejected my offer, saying, "All you've been good for is errands, like some decorative piece." She appeared determined to harass me at every opportunity. I was going to object when my line was interrupted by a voice. "It's a huge error, but we'll be all right with Lucas here. Having a brilliant programmer here makes me happy. I'm depending on you." The client had to have complained directly. Owner Madison's entrance immediately increased the level of attention in the room, and Chris then showed up in the office. Nathan rushed back from his fieldwork, following Chris. With all due respect, Owner Madison, what makes this individual an exceptional programmer? He hasn't been useful since he joined until today, Linda said mockingly to Chris. Why don't you take a look? At Chris's signal, Nathan began to issue commands from this point on. Linda protested with a startled look as he demanded that the software data be sent to me right away. Are you serious, President Carter? Leaving the adjustment to Lucas rather than me? He's practically worthless. Even if he had a month, Linda angrily objected. It's an executive order, Nathan said, dismissing her. Linda was forced to comply with the president's order. She reluctantly forwarded the information to me. A straightforward communication error, a blatant human error, was the cause of the specification change. We will need to get better at this in the future. I went over the received program data. Linda probably created it. It was a software that was feminine, lovely, and adaptable, but it also contained an aberration that appeared to have been purposefully added. I could easily find and fix this. By Lucas Euro, we can meet the deadline. Please check the updated specs. That's how I spoke to Linda without looking away from the television. My fingers kept moving smoothly over the keyboard. Linda paused as she watched the code flow on my screen after taking a short breath as if to clarify what I had said. How can this be? She repeated in a low voice, overwhelmed by the software I was developing. Why, that's a dumb query. They claimed to have employed a brilliant programmer, didn't they? Linda was taking a breath when Chris spoke to her. Chris talked about my experience working for a large H firm overseas and how I was hired to help with the present internal crisis in a voice that was loud enough for the other staff members to hear. Nathan has also been informing me on the current situation within the organization. There are far too many people in the top echelons who lack humility and attention to detail in their work. A business with such personnel is not one in which I wish to invest. When Chris remarked, I want Lucas to clean the house, that's what I'm thinking, several faces turned red. Someone most likely set up this purposeful bug to frame Linda. Despite her personality problems, Linda's programming abilities are comparable to Nathan's. She wouldn't typically make such a mistake, in my opinion. Chris gave Linda a shoulder pat and walked out of the office after saying, I'll provide the funds. Please resolve this issue promptly. She most likely visited the client. Please help me, Linda, I told Linda, who was still stunned by my statement and in a trance. It's hard for me to meet the deadline alone. Linda jolted back to the present. She reluctantly took a seat next to me and got to work. Her voice was gentle as she said, Thank you. I'm positive that's what she said, but it was a voice that only I could hear. Even though it took all night, we managed to fix the bug and make the necessary revisions to the specification by the time the sun rose in the morning. I think no other company could match the speed. My shoulders felt as rigid as steel, and my eyes hurt. You performed admirably. We arrived on schedule. Nathan offered me an energy drink and remarked, I knew I could count on you. There were bags under his eyes, too. Nathan had found the bug's originator and determined a penalty for them while we were fixing it. The perpetrator was a male mid-level worker who was envious of Linda's promotion. He had first met Linda, but he couldn't accept his protege surpassing him in position and ability. Regardless of your perspective, jealousy is a nasty thing. Have you discussed leaving with him? I inquired about the penalty. Nathan gave a silent nod. I understand. His expression made it clear that the sympathetic Nathan was having a hard time making the choice. Do you want some coffee, President Carter? Linda gently offered Nathan, who was exhausted, coffee. Nathan took it with pleasure. Linda then offered me a cup of coffee without saying anything. Her normally mischievous eyes softened with a smile as I received it with a wry smile. As I relaxed her, Linda's ears flushed. I wish I had a partner who could offer me coffee when I'm tired like this, I said. Nathan didn't mean to offend owner Madison when he stated, Don't expect that from Chris. She's useless for anything but making money. During the all-nighter, his loving tone made it obvious. Chris called a couple of times. She was keeping the client happy at that wine location by amusing them. Because of her, we worked without being hurried or distracted by complaints. It really was a relief. You say it's finished? Well done. I said, I've finished up on my end too, and threw everything in a cab. Chris walked hesitantly into the office, looking a little inebriated. She said it was a pleasure and gave me a sandwich prepared by the restaurant's chef. It appears that the thermos, which holds heat well, contains soup. For our exhausted bodies, it was a much-needed provision. You seem to have been drinking until just now, don't you? Chris chuckled and said she had no other skills, saying, All I can do is entertain and spend money to make sure no one complains. She smiled at me and continued, But because of this talent, I was able to forcefully draw my destiny towards me. Her unexpected comment caught me off guard, and all I could do was stare in confusion. Intrigued, Linda plunged into the discussion. Are you referring to Lucas as your soulmate? Huh. I was also unaware of this. Take a look at Lucas's face. He looks like a bean-shot pigeon. She stared at me while Chris held her slukasak and giggled. What? What does that signify? Chris put her index finger over her lips and murmured, It's a secret until you remember, with a cunning smirk. I was so tired after the afternoon delivery that I dozed off in the restroom when I had my first dream about the day I was leaving for overseas. A mature-looking girl crossed her face in front of me as my parents said her farewell. I was drawn to her porcelain-like pale complexion and thin chin. The girl gave me a quick smile after that. Am I valuable enough to be looked at in this way? Her inquiry caught me off guard, and I apologized for my impolite gaze. I think you're definitely worth admiring, I replied. She sat down next to me with a thud and murmured, Thank you. That gives me confidence. Then, in the brief period before boarding, she indicated that she wanted to learn more about me. I think we discussed one another. She was traveling to England to find out more about her grandfather's financial district firm, while I was on my way to Oxford University. I remember her laughing as she expressed her one and only wish. I want to live surrounded by things I love, doing what I love. She got up and looked directly into my face when the boarding announcement was made. I designate you as my destined person, she continued. You called me attractive, and now I've determined that you are my objective. Be ready. When I woke up, Chris's face crossed over with the face of the girl who had giggled mischievously. Good morning, indeed. Chris's voice sounded from right next to me, and I was startled. Have you got any memories of me? Finding you was quite the undertaking. Really? Were you trying to find me? I was so taken aback that I asked the question awkwardly. Yes, I hired 6 detectives, and it cost me a fortune. I just knew a little bit about Oxford University. After he laughed, Chris told me what she was going to do next. Despite the fact that that stage had long since been surpassed, she stated solemnly, The second phase of the plan is to make you fall in love with me. What should I tell her about this? When I inform her, how would she probably look? Excited, I picked my words carefully in the hopes that they would be the best response she could receive.